Alright, I am now 6 weeks out from the Sydney Marathon. Just finished a nice easy run, and today's video in the series is on a topic I kind of wish I didn't have to make a video about. I'm starting to have a little niggle that's interrupting my training a little bit, but I want to look at how you can manage that. Firstly, so it doesn't interrupt your training too much, and secondly, doesn't interrupt you on race day. So I'm going to finish cooling down, get home. Let's jump into the video. Alright, let's jump into the video. If you have watched any of the videos in this series leading up to the Sydney Marathon, thank you so much for watching. I've got some great feedback and keen to keep pushing this channel to new heights. If you're new here, hey, I'm TK. I am an ex-physiotherapist turned photographer who loves to run. Yes, I'm having a little niggle with a hamstring tendinopathy, but I want to make it clear that there is always something you can do and always focus your attention on. None of this video is meant to be health advice, so if you are suffering from an injury, please do get it checked out by a professional, but let's jump in. So first things first, always listen to your body. That means if you are experiencing any minor pains or discomfort from running, don't just ignore it. As you're starting to build up your mileage, yes, sometimes these things start to show their head, but if you just ignore them, they can continue to get worse and worse and worse. If addressed properly, they don't have to get in the way of your training, but if you ignore them, perhaps maybe they will. Personally, I didn't follow this advice very well at all. After doing the 10K race recently, I pushed on that week, did one speed session during that week, and then another by running a pretty fast park run on the Saturday. This was despite feeling a little bit of discomfort in my hamstring while warming up for that park run. I went out and did it anyway, and I went out and did it at quite a quick pace. So the next day I went out for my long run and I only made it through 13 kilometers. I could feel my hamstring pretty much from the beginning, and it just gradually got worse and worse. So if I had taken that Saturday off, just taking it easy even, I probably would have got through the next day perfectly fine. One important thing to consider here is always looking at your training program as a complete whole. One important principle that a lot of people follow is the 80-20 principle. This is both for pro runners and amateurs like me alike. If you're unfamiliar with this, it's basically ensuring 80% of your running is done relatively easy, which not only reduces your risk of injury, it's super important for building your base aerobic fitness. The other 20%, of course, is done at the faster paces to improve that higher end fitness. Just remember that the stress and strain on your body at these faster paces is far higher. Not all runs are equal, even if they are the same distance or time. Your faster runs are obviously super important, but don't overdo them. If you are having even a slight niggle, it might be better to just cut it back and just focus on those easy base building runs while you get on top of it. Next up is really focusing on your recovery, and we can look at this at everything you're doing outside of your running. Yes, super important are doing a good warm up and cool down. Warming up, ease into your activity, do some muscle activations, especially to any areas of weakness. I always make sure to do some isometric hamstring contractions to get the muscle firing and just gently loaded before I start. Even on my easy runs, I also like to get all the muscles around my glutes firing, as hip stability is really important for running. Post-run recovery should really be your prime concern. For us working, sometimes this can be neglected a little bit, but you can plan before you run and just focus on a really few key things. One of those is making sure you're getting adequate and healthy nutrition and hydration straight after you run. So ideally within that 30-minute window if you can. Often I'll blend up my protein smoothie with fruits and a bit of veg, plenty of carbs and protein before I run. If I feel tired and lazy after the run or need to start my workday quickly, I know it's already there waiting for me. Also consider how you'll be spending the rest of your day. Obviously, pro runners can really focus on their recovery and largely do as little as possible. If you got to go straight off to work, this isn't always possible. As an example, you might think running in the morning, going and sitting at the office all day actually is a nice recovery, but those prolonged postures, especially in sustained hip flexion, aren't actually good for a lot of your running muscles. So if you can, break it up where possible. I personally try and both stand and kneel throughout the day at my desk. For me, really avoiding my hip flexors getting too tight. If you know you've got a big day at work coming up, or perhaps you work a very physical job, definitely don't be afraid to adjust your program accordingly. We all do have unique needs. That's why training programs need to be tailored to fit you. Next up is addressing any weaknesses or imbalances. Now, as runners, we all have these in our own unique ways, and it does make us more prone to certain injuries. As we really increase the mileage or increase our training load, this is where they start to show themselves. This is where you can focus on things like stretching, mobility work, but perhaps even more important are things like core and also stability work. Let's start with an obvious one we can look at. Running is a single leg activity. By that I mean you're only on one leg at a time, so having good stability up through your hips and pelvis is essential when running. As a simple test, you should be able to easily balance on one leg, even do that when closing your eyes. You should also be able to comfortably complete single leg squats on both legs with good form. If you find either of these difficult or notice a big difference between your left and right, there's some simple things you can adjust. You don't need access to a gym or heavy weights to get started. Simple single leg exercises like this can really help improve your running and help avoid potential injuries. Certainly don't be put off stretching, but sometimes stretching alone isn't enough to address these imbalances. If you've got a bit of weakness or dysfunction there, this is probably why certain muscle groups are getting tight in the first place. Stretching alone might not be enough to fix the problem. This next one is perhaps the most important of all, and that's don't be afraid to seek professional help. If you do have a bit of a niggle, don't be afraid to get it checked out and get some advice. My background in physio, I'm obviously going to recommend you go and see a physiotherapist. Perhaps more important than any hands-on work they can do is what we just talked about, getting properly assessed, finding any weaknesses or dysfunction, and getting specific exercise to work to improve that. I would like to say on this point, it really does matter who you see. Unfortunately, like all industries, not all physios are the same. Make sure you see a good one, ideally one that has a lot of experience dealing with running injuries. They might be a running specific clinic, or they might be a runner themselves, but at least know they've got good experience dealing with running injuries. If you're not sure where to start to find a good physio, perhaps ask a few runners around if they know anyone, do a bit of research, because it really will make a difference in your injury management. Which again leads me directly to my next point, which is addressing running form. Now, this one by no means is something that we all need to do. We all have different running styles, that's perfectly fine, but there is a few things that may make you very prone to injury. Again, I really recommend you seek professional advice if you're trying to make any adjustments to your running form. I'm a good example of this. Naturally, I was a big overstrider. I used to have a really low cadence and my feet would land way out in front of my body. All these things really increase the load on your body, and I had constant issues like shin splints, calf pain, even chronic ITB irritation that left me giving up running for a few years. So these changes often don't have to be dramatic, and if you can get some simple cues or adjustments, these can be vital in addressing injuries. Some key things that I touched on, like cadence, ensuring you're not overstriding, and ensuring your feet aren't landing way out in front of your body. They should be landing under your center of mass. 180 in terms of cadence can be a good number to aim for, but each case should be looked at differently. So again, I always suggest getting an experienced professional to drive any of these changes. So I'll be doing my best to follow some of this advice, get myself fit and ready to go, hopefully ready for that sub 3 hour goal. But remember, for whatever reason, if you don't quite get there, the marathon will still be there when you get back. Be sensible and remember to look at the larger picture. So thanks so much for watching. If all goes to plan this week, next week we'll have another race video, but I'm going to be sensible. I'm not going to all out race this one. It is the City to Surf, a 14-kilometer, very hilly, fun run. And I'll be doing this more as a hilly tempo session to get me ready for the marathon. So I'll take you along with me for that one. See you next week. Remember, we all run better together. Bye.